All right. So we should be live now. I'll wait a second. If you guys can let me know if you can hear me, and hopefully we'll then get going. Let's see here. Pull it up and see if it's working. All right. People are saying that they can hear. All right. Just set this up a little bit more. Okay, how's everyone doing today? Hope everyone's having a good day so far. I was just taking a bit of a nap, feeling a bit tired today, a little bit under the weather. So as people start to file in, I'm gonna begin answering a couple of the Patreon questions this week. So I think I've got 3 questions. So the first question says, hey Jake, wanted to send a question for the Sunday chat. What are your thoughts on the long-term prospects of Shadowless? I want to collect the cards from my childhood that I have a personal connection with, and that is base set. However, I'm not really interested in any grades less than a 9. I can't afford first edition 9s, which leads me to the Shadowless possibility. Thanks. Yeah, I think Shadowless cards are great personally. I think for the very reason that you're talking about, they give a great option that's certainly more affordable than what first edition base is right now, but still has the same look and layout and feel of first edition base, and creates definitely a far rarer option than unlimited base, where there's lots and lots of unlimited base. So nobody knows the exact breakdown of how many first edition cards versus how many Shadowless cards versus how many unlimited cards are, but I can tell you that from my perspective, it's a lot closer, the amount of first edition and Shadowless cards there are in the world as compared to the amount of Shadowless cards there are to unlimited. So I think first edition Shadowless are quite rare and somewhat similar, and then unlimited is a lot more. Is what I would have to guess. In terms of high grades, it's quite difficult, particularly for PSA 10s. If people, I'm sure, have looked at the pop reports to see that Shadowless 10s are extremely hard to find. In fact, there are less Shadowless 10s than there are first edition PSA 10s from base sets. So no one knows exactly why that is. But no huge insight on it, unfortunately, other than that I own more Shadowless cards and Shadowless PSA 10 cards than I own first edition base set PSA 10 cards, because as a collector and also as an investor, I always saw more value and where my money could go further. I think it's just always been the case with Shadowless for me personally, but different people are gonna have different answers, and overall the market's gonna decide eventually on what the correct ratio from first edition to Shadowless is. I think first edition will always have that, and should in most cases always have that premium over Shadowless. But there's some Shadowless cards, particularly cards like the Shadowless Clefairy, Shadowless Raichu, and Shadowless Chansey too, which is the hardest one to get. Of course, base set first edition Chansey is also really, really hard to get. So there's some cards that aren't as hard to get comparatively to the other cards in first edition, but are extremely hard to get in Shadowless PSA 10. And I think that those types of cards, the value of the first edition version versus the Shadowless version is a bit more in question. And I think in some cases the Shadowless version should be about the same price for me personally. But overall, I think that the first, particularly when with the specific colors that don't have that reality in terms of the Shadowless PSA 10 population is so much less than the first edition PSA 10 population, that first edition should have a decent multiplier, whether that's 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, or even less than 2 times. That's sort of up to the market, I think. But I like them, and I think that I would be comfortable and happy, continuing to buy Shadowless cards. They're just going to be more of them, particularly when you get into 7s and 8s. I remember, next question. I remember sometime last year you made a video on whether the Pokemon market is currently in a bubble or not, and would give an update in the future. So my question is, would you say the market is closer to a bubble now? Just today I saw there is a second UK grading company planning to start up, and I'm thinking to myself, can the market really handle all of this? So I think that Logan Paul and the hype around Logan Paul created a bubble, a shorter term bubble that popped in a lot of ways, and a number of cards, particularly the less rare cards, really got hit very strongly in Vintage. I think that that bubble really already popped, and they've come back a little bit, but are still way down, over 50-60% down for certain cards. And then other kind of rarer cards that got hit have come back, like the Crystal Charizard cards like that. So I think that was definitely, whether we want to call that a bubble or just temporary, irrational exuberance of the market, thinking that they'd go up forever, lots of people coming in and then lots of people leaving or selling those cards in sort of a panic, and now the market's slowly building back up around those cards. Whatever terminology you want to use, that happened. I think that the danger right now is that the whole collectibles world, online shopping world, is in a bubble. So, when people leave their houses again and after the pandemic, are people going to be as interested in have the amount of money once the unemployment checks run out, and or people go back to work and either make less or have trouble, finding work, and if the government doesn't, stops these continued unemployment benefits, what happens there in terms of, because I think so much of that money is coming into all of these markets. So I think that there's a bit of concern around that. Where's all the money coming from, and will that be turned off eventually? 2, the interest. Where's all the interest coming from, and will that change once people can do their outdoor in-person hobbies again? Or are people going to go back to those outdoor and in-person hobbies as much, or are people going to stick to these online sorts of things? The amount of money we can see right now in something like NBA Top Shot, pouring into NBA Top Shot, any sort of online buying and selling platform, whether you get a physical card or not, just millions and millions of dollars quickly pouring into these things all the time. They're dropping like new packs there daily. And $1 million is just like disappearing from people, just another $1 million, another $1 million, another $1 million. So it's just a crazy amount of money. I think all of that activity makes me anxious that we're in a broader, larger bubble. I think that your rarer cards are not, if they retrace, I think they'll retrace less. And just like we saw with cards like Crystal Charizard, or cards that are just have really, really, really desirable and also are so much rarer in terms of the amount that exists. I think I would hope that those cards do end up coming back a lot quicker. Going down less and then coming back. I think even more importantly, coming back a lot quicker, and hopefully seeing new highs in 5 to 6 years, even if they do retrace 50% in the interim. That's the type of stuff that I'd be looking for. I think a lot of the modern stuff may never come back in value. I think it might get hit higher. You might see even larger percentage decreases on some items, and it never really be able to recover because there's so much population, particularly a lot of these PSA, cards that are at PSA are coming back from PSA right now that anyone and everyone sent in like 30, 40 copies of certain promo cards, that sort of thing. So that's where it's going to be difficult. Even though those cards are cheaper, the market cap for those cards are so much higher than vintage cards because there are so few vintage cards as compared to those. And that's what I think people are really, really missing in Modern, who are putting a lot of money there, because it's just a lot more affordable. And I think that people are wanting the hit of investing and of gambling and of collecting, if I'm being blunt, and the Modern gives them that, but unfortunately, because that supply side is eventually gonna hit them there. So, but at the same time, I there's a lot of hugely bloated cards on the vintage side, in my opinion, that I would definitely think are way overvalued for where we are in the history of this hobby. So everyone's going to have a different opinion. I think you just got to trust your own assessment of the market in these concepts. And as far as like UK grading companies and other grading companies starting, yeah, it's interesting, and I'm sure there'll be questions today about PSA doubling their prices and all this sort of stuff, and how that's going to affect a potential bubble. Or the more of that type of stuff you see, the more it can make a bubble worse, but also extend how long we're in a bubble or how long we're in a growth market. So, yeah. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll let you know if my opinions sort of change on any of that, but that's my general approach right now is be cautious. I would definitely not be leveraging yourself. I would be taking gains. I'd be trying to I would not be greedy, particularly if this money is very important, to your life, to your well-being. And I would invest and move stuff into the rarest possible items. All right. Last question. What do you think is going to happen to the hobby once people are back in the office and have expenses to spend their money on? I think we're definitely in a collectibles bubble, and the overall demand for collectibles is super inflated from people working from home and having fewer expenses to throw disposable income at. But there's also some organic growth in demand in the hobby that may be here to stay from the 25th anniversary and people rediscovering the hobby. Assuming we're in for a correction as a collector, what are your recommended sets to look at besides the Neos? Personally, I've been avoiding set cards entirely, and I've been buying pre-2010 Japanese promos, but just wanted to get your 2 cents. Yeah. So you just sort of touched on all the stuff that I said in my last answer there. Yeah, I think you're of course spot on with all of your analysis. You and I are certainly in agreement on what we're seeing. I feel most comfortable buying my, if anyone just saw my PSA return video, a card like that finalist Tropical Wind card, most people aren't going to be able to track those down or afford them, and I don't know what a price on that card should be now. I bought that this year for about $1,500, which to me is just shocking steal in this market. That to me, within this market, is easily $15,000 card, like easily in this type of market. Those are the types of cards and buys that I feel much more comfortable with. The types of buys where people don't really know what that card is. They don't understand that that card's rarer than the Pikachu Illustrator. They don't understand that, that although it's a stamped card, that art is only available for that year. Unlike the highest trophy cards from that year that have arts that were repeated in other years. So I think that the finalist and champion stamps in particular, and that year only had a finalist stamp, are they're just people don't understand exactly what that is and the importance of those items. I think at this time in history, I think they will one day. Again, for me, it's all about value, not about hype and listening to other people. So, trying to find cards like that, in terms of set cards, yeah, Neos, even like unlimited Neos, E-Series, some of the things like Gold Stars, things like, I do think potentially Level X's maintain enough. I think that the popularity will increase on those over time, and I'm still waiting for all that supply to hit, and we'll see. There could be tons and tons of supply to hit. I just don't ever think it's going to completely meet the demand for what that's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm not sure about that, but those types of cards, I think some of the secret rares from like the plasma sets, I think those cards are really cool. They were very difficult to pull. There just isn't that much of that product, difficult to grade. When we're talking set cards that are still reasonably affordable, those are just all much, much rarer cards than Rainbow Rares and things that are being pulled now from like Hidden Fates or anything from Evolutions. So, and yet the prices are very similar or even cheaper for some of these cards. So again, we're going to have to see what the demand is like for all of those. I think that the demand for certain things will continue to grow with new generations coming in. The demand for other things, I think, won't necessarily grow as much. I think that your sort of original 151 Pokemon, although they're always going to be the first and most valuable and most important to the hobby, I think you're going to see as younger and younger people get more disposable income, and they see that they can get some of those 2nd gen, 3rd gen, 4th gen, 5th gen Pokemon for cheaper and get their original cards, they would much rather go there because those are the Pokemon they actually played in the video games and those are their favorite Pokemon. And so even though they have a real appreciation and probably see the value of the originals, and we just haven't experienced that yet, because these guys are still 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There are a lot of like 20 to 25-year-olds coming in the hobby with more and more disposable income that's just going to grow over the next 10 years as long as they stay in the hobby. So looking at those types of set cards from those middle generations. If you go back on my channel and I made a video, the 5 category types that I would invest in, I still think those are the 5 things that I'd be investing in. And I mentioned all of those cards. I mentioned some of the, Top Zone and Card-S. I think that those cards are very expensive right now. So it's tough to. I think that they're still great cards, but they were better value back when I made that video, and much better than they are now. So in terms of the price. So hopefully that insight's helpful. And if everyone could take a second, as we just finish these questions, just take a second to like the video. That I would greatly appreciate that, and subscribe if you haven't yet and are getting some value from this. Both of those things would be very helpful to the channel. Okay. And the question also said that they're currently buying pre-2010 Japanese promos. Yeah, there are a lot of interesting ones. I think some of the 7-Eleven, Pokepark promos, really cool art, pretty small releases, we think. just have a lot more. They're just going to be a lot less of those, and I think that they're over time, over the long run, going to have a lot more value to collectors. And people don't know about them. They don't understand the rarity of some of them. All right. Okay. So let's start with some questions from people watching. All right, so it looks like the first question here is from Andrew M. Andrew M says, Jake, I hope all is well. You got your PSA submission video uploaded yesterday, so I'm wondering two things. One, were the grades more consistent than you expected? And two, when did you submit those cards? So I actually, as I said in the beginning of the video, I thought that the grades were a little different than what I expected, but when I actually looked over the cards, they were all fairly close. I think that I got gypped on a couple of grades by maybe by 1 point, but nothing that was too crazy erratic. A friend of the channel sent me some pictures of a card that he just recently received back that he got a PSA 9 that was like a PSA 6. It had just like bad damage on it, and yet they graded it a 9, and the centering was terrible. So, but nothing in my that I got back that was just like absolutely egregious. So again, we'll have to see. Those I sent back in, I think May or June of last year. So pretty long, a long time ago. I have another, I think, 200 or so cards at PSA now that I'm not expecting to get back for a long time. So that'll be a larger sample size for me to gauge, and will maybe be a sample size of cards that they are grading in the thick of grading all these other cards to see how do we feel like they're the fact that they're so backed up, is that going to be affecting the quality of the grading? Are we going to see a lot of like random grades and grades that we disagree with, either grades that are far too high or far too low? So we'll have to wait and see. But on mine, I felt like they were reasonable enough. Some of the Southern Island ones I thought were a little too high. Andrew M says, I know you did note that there were a couple of grades initially that were lower than you predicted. However, you seem to notice some scratches you hadn't previously noticed. Is this a good sign? Yeah, it's such a small sample size. I wouldn't judge anything based on my 37 cards I got back based on what other people are going to see. But yeah, there were definitely some scratches on one of the cards that I forgot that there were so many scratches on. I'm surprised at myself that I sent that in. I'm usually really meticulous. So I do think that with that shipment, there was a 750 grading special for a lot of them, and I went a little bit quicker and rushed it a bit more, and there were so many people sending in at that time. So I may have made a mistake on sending in the Nido Queen, which I wouldn't have, to get a 6 back. To me, that's a binder card. At least at this stage in Pokemon. All right. CJ Dwork says, hey, Jake. Hey, CJ. Nice to see you here. Happy Saturday. Congrats on your grades. Thank you. Yeah, it was fun getting it back. I wouldn't say that I think I did okay. I think that a lot of the big cards were graded fairly. I wish the World Promos had been graded a little bit better. The most expensive card from the set, I wish that had gone a 9. And if that had gone a 9, I would have felt okay about sort of everything. But the Charizard grades were, I think, very fair. And there's obviously a lot of value there. And I got those 2 PSA 10s on the Jungle cards and a couple PSA 10 on the Screen promos. So definitely a decent return. Andrew M said, had a chat yesterday with TBJ. He was making high price claims on a new item a day after raising questions of morality, ethics, and Pokemon. He seems to think he plays no part in price influencing. Well, I don't know how he thinks he has no influence in price influencing. He talks about prices and makes claims about what something should go for or will probably go for before it has even been released. So that's blatant, like telling people what they should pay for an item, and lots of people listening. So, and there's been lots and lots of cases where he will make a video about a product that hasn't moved for months, that he'll make a video about it, and then all of a sudden it'll move dramatically. So he may not want that to be happening. I do believe he probably doesn't want that to be happening and just enjoys making the videos and the content, but to not see that means that either he's not looking at the market that carefully and tracking sort of his influence, or he doesn't want to acknowledge that and take that criticism. I mean, I think that it's not, his audience is taking advantage of him with that too. Because when he says something, they probably run to buy up the product because they know that other people are going to do it, and then it has an effect. But just to kind of not acknowledge it, I think, is a bit problematic. It's an impossible thing to measure and see accurately. I think a lot of his videos, he doesn't do that. I think it's just some videos that he does that sort of pre-pricing things. I remember when he made a couple of videos a long time ago saying about those Rainbow Charizard trophy from Japan, saying how he thinks that card should be worth this amount when it comes out, and that he doesn't think that there'll be an English one. And it's just like, just understanding that, like, when you say that, it's going to have a huge effect on the market, and you don't have any insider knowledge about that. So it's sort of like what you say, you should be really careful what you say when you don't have that insider knowledge, because you should understand that people view you as an expert. Even if you're not claiming to be an expert or claiming to have that knowledge, I think people, because you have a big subscriber count and lots of people view your videos, they see you as an expert or someone who's knowledgeable and knows what prices should be. So you're become a tastemaker. CJ Dework says, Jake, do you think you'll be sending more cards to CGC now versus PSA? And thoughts on starting your own grading company with Pat Flynn and Sagar? I am not sending any cards to CGC. I don't trust CGC in terms of its market value and in terms of figuring out. I think that they grade much tougher. I think that there's more value to send to PSA before this price increase, which is why I sent all of my cards out. I sent out a lot of cards right before the price increase a couple months ago now, because I thought the price increase was going to come, January 1st of the new year. I was very surprised that there wasn't a price increase then. And so I just sort of prepared myself for that. I think that CGC, I believe in buying the card and not the grade, but the market is not at that point. And I just think so many more people are going to prefer a PSA 10 to a CGC 9.5, even if they're the same. And we really see that in prices. People cannot sell their 9.5s for anywhere near the PSA 10s they're going for. If that changes at some point, I might change with that market, but I think it's really hard to get CGC 10s. I don't think it's nearly as hard to get PSA 10s. So I'm just not going to grade I'm not going to throw all that potential money away grading with CGC, just to be really blunt. Even though I think that CGC in the long run, and if you're going to really hold those cards, I could see CGC gaining in credibility and value and a market being built. And, you have people like Squeaks who are talking about how great CGC is, and influencers like that who I believe he's doing ads for them too and is promoted by them. I think having big influencers, like if he continues to grow his channel, which I'm sure he will, he's a really smart guy, knows the market, and is producing great content and creating a great community. That type of stuff is going to really matter for the prices of CGC and the legitimacy of CGC in the long run. Having some of the bigger voices in Pokemon saying that it's okay, it's great. So we'll see. In the short run, you kind of have to play the BS, because BS and hype and what people say does affect these things. In the long run, I'm a value investor. But for me, there's no rush to get cards graded that I'm not looking to sell anyway. And so I'm going to hold them. I'm going to see what the market decides, and then I'm going to make decisions about that in the future. So, and I prepared for that by sending all of the cards I wanted to off to CGC. Right now, the only cards I have that I'm really looking to send, I have a few Pokemon that I'm just going to wait probably a year to send again. Because I want to see what happens after the vaccines get distributed and things open up again. I want to see how that affects the market. I'm going to wait. And then I'm also going to wait... and then the only other cards I have that I'm going to send to Beckett, actually, because they're Dragon Ball Z cards, and I'm going to start to send those, and Beckett does a better job of grading them and labeling them with the correct info. So that's where I'm at. So I saw this coming in a sense with the higher prices, and so I prepared myself to basically not send in any cards this year, because I have the cards I want to sell already. I've sent the ones I want to flip or sell out already. And that's my situation. I think for people who didn't do that and are thinking, where do I send my cards now if I want to keep flipping? I think you're in a difficult situation. I think it's risky and riskier sending it into CGC, but I think, and I'm sure people are going to ask this question, now that PSA doubled their prices, it's crazy. I mean, unbelievable, like, that they doubled their prices. I'm shocked. I don't know how the market's going to react to that. I have a hard time believing that people are going to be sending into PSA at those prices a lot of this modern, but we'll have to see. Maybe the prices will go up, and so because now people are valuing the case at $20 instead of $10, and that will cause the prices to go up on a lot of these modern cards, and so it will create incentive for people to keep sending them out there. It may end up helping the modern market a little bit because less people are gonna be sending to PSA. So if less cards get graded, it may actually save some of the modern market. Although I think there's already so many cards there that it doesn't matter that much, particularly for sets like Hidden Fates and Evolutions. And I just think that a lot of people are going to be grading them in CGC. But I'm sure that a number of people out there are feeling a lot of the same hesitance as me. And that it's a lot of money to send a lot of cards to a brand new grading company like CGC, even if they have, they're certainly not a brand new company at grading, and I think they're doing a great job. But just in terms of what people are actually going to buy those cards at, and how easy it actually is to get a 10 versus a 9.5, and what that 9.5 actually sells at, and how much of a hit you take on that. So, a lot of difficult questions to answer. No easy answer. I think people trying to give you easy answers on what to do are misleading you, because there's not an obvious answer from what I can tell of what you should be doing. I think if you're really good at flipping and you're really good at finding value where others don't in the modern market, and you really understand the ins and outs of how to get cards and then how to grade them quickly and then flip them and sell them, and you have a good eBay store where you're really able to sell quickly, there certainly is still money to be made, and you should be grading at CGC. That's your option right now. That is your best option. I think it's unfortunate because it's really cut down, I think, on the value of doing that and on the money making. I think it's so much easier to make money right now, and harder to make money in Pokemon right now than it was even 6-7 months ago, let alone a year ago. So. Hopefully that's helpful. Hey Connor, good to see ya. Says, hey Jake. John Pokemon. Connor says he just had a podcast drop today talking about finance and Pokemon. Everyone should go check that out. I'll check it out too, Connor, once I get a chance, if I can find it. Good to see everyone. Jimmy Jam, STC, Winters, Gustavo, Ricardo, Kene. All right, let's see where the next question is here. Ricardo N says, "Hey Jake, wondering what you think of the 2003 Best of Game promo set. Some cool cards you don't see often. Also low pops on most cards." I don't know. I see those around. I don't have any great insight into them. I don't love them for some reason. I just never did. They're cool looking. I guess I just don't feel connected to them. I imagine a lot of people have a similar experience. You know, you see them, you're like, they're cool looking. I don't know how rare they are, but I also don't really like know why I should care a lot about this card or why I should be connected to it. I would say that they're certainly good. They're certainly vintage. They certainly do have value, and they're great cards. So I definitely don't want to be too negative, but in terms of like putting them on the level of like the Southern Island promos or these types of sets that I just think are more, have this like amazing identity and history in Pokemon and just are going to connect to more people instinctively and intuitively. Or even just like the Black Star promos, a lot of those, particularly the earlier ones. But they're good. I don't know what price they're at, but I don't think that they're like this huge missed opportunity type of thing that people aren't, that everyone's missing. John Pokemon says, "Hey Jake, I've had a few cards returned by BGS that have been upside in the case. Not sure if it is worth the $8 recase and one want to get." Are you saying upside down? That would be crazy. I've never seen that. Upside in the case. So I don't know if you meant upside down. That would really, really bother me. I would definitely get them recased if that happened. That's really frustrating. I'm really sorry to hear that. That's crazy. I've never heard that happening. Yeah, I would like call the company if that happened and demand like, what are you guys doing over there? What happened here? I would take pictures and show them and try to see if they can refund you the money or pay for it to be reslabbed or do it for free, and pay for all the shipping and everything. That's because that's outrageous. People talking about the PSA 9 Shadowless Charizard as cheap or not cheap, going back to the earlier conversation we were having. Definitely not a cheap card. Muhammad Mukadi, hey, long-time listener, what would you rather buy and why? First edition Charizard PSA 5-6 for 8 to 10K, or Gold Star Charizard for PSA 9-10, or Goku Power Awakened PSA 10, all in range of 10K right now. So definitely not the Goku from DBS. I think Dragon Ball Super, although I love Dragon Ball Super, I think the value's in the vintage DBZ right now. It's just so much more, in a lot of cases, more affordable and much rarer, and I think much more connected to people's childhood and the early sagas in Dragon Ball Z, which I think will continue to have a resurgence. I like Dragon Ball Super for sure, though. In terms of the other two cards, for me personally, definitely Gold Star Charizard. Any day, every day. But it's going to be up to collectors. So if you're asking purely for an investment, what I think is going to do better over time, I think it's tough. It's a tough call. If I absolutely had to guess, I would put my money on the Gold Star Charizard in this climate, because I think that there's just been more hype and attention and awareness around the first edition Charizard, and I think that over time, Gold Star cards and that Gold Star Charizard may have another moment. But it's never ever going to be nearly as iconic of a card, even if it's a much rarer card. So it's just really tough. It's a really tough call. Definitely don't have a definitive, like, one or the other on it. Tasty Pie, can you tell us your view on NFTs? I have no idea what the whole hype is about, but could it have an influence on Pokemon? For example, if the existing cards are made into digital versions. Yes, definitely could have an impact on Pokemon. Pokemon may end up doing it or getting involved in NFTs, just like the NBA has done with Top Shot. They may not. They may completely not. There's a ton of nonsense and BS right now going on in NFTs, and people, I think, hyping things up for their own greed and their own profit to make money. A lot more of that happening than organic collector experience and enjoyment. But there is also collector enjoyment happening there. But so much of it is just about the money right now. These Top Shot moments were going for nothing, right? Until celebrities started getting involved, and until people started seeing the prices going up and hyping it and all that sort of stuff. You just have to be careful. I think that something like Top Shot is a genuinely enjoyable, fun experience to open online packs, to wait in the queue, to be in something that's new and exciting. I think it does provide a lot of value, but I'm in a lot of these conversations with people who are talking about it, and they're just not saying anything. They're not talking about fundamentals. They're not talking about it's a lot of like unsophisticated analysis. So generally when a market is made up by a lot of, I think, unsophisticated analysis, that makes me worried, but I think that there's a lot of potential there too. So right now, for this moment, if you can buy those packs when they first come out at retail or the original price, you'll probably make money on them, both in the short to medium term. In the long term, I'm not so sure. But again, printing money for these companies, they do these pack drops whenever they want, and people are waiting in insane lines, and the company's making like millions and millions of dollars in the blink of an eye. Millions every time they drop a pack, and they're having overflow right now where there are way more people than they're creating artificial rarity right now, because there are way more people who want them, but they're not printing to demand yet, because they're intentionally, the company's trying to cause this hype and mania and craze. So just be very aware what's happening psychologically in those markets. They are intentionally getting people excited. They're intentionally doing marketing to get people hyped up, to create value for people. And these companies are coming away with millions and millions of dollars, and other people, the investors, the early ones, which could be friends of the company or connected, or the early hypers or influencers or celebrities, are probably going to walk away with millions, and a lot of people may end up holding the bag. Okay, so we shall see. Unlike Pokemon, which it took a long time to build this market, and although a lot of that's happened this year, there have been a lot of people in this market who were here and built the fundamentals and foundation of this market that have been here for many years, when there hasn't been that much money to be made. And it hasn't been built by celebrities or started by celebrities, that sort of thing, built on fame and attention. There's real enjoyment and value in opening Pokemon cards and building out these packs. Although, and now I'm repeating myself, I do think that there is real value in opening online packs and having those digital online things. I think it can be fun. And I think particularly for younger generations and kids who grew up with that and grew up with these loot boxes, just think of like NBA 2K and how you can like buy those packs, and how much money kids spent on those packs, how much money kids spend on Fortnite skins. All that stuff is going to be extremely appealing to them. And the reality is it's all gambling, and the reality is that the more you can remove people from physical money, the easier it is to get money from them and make it feel like they're not spending money. It's why people spent much more money when we invented credit cards, because psychologically it's just much easier to spend money on a credit card than it is if you have cash to spend that cash. So just be very, very, very careful. These things are like potential House of Cards situations. Think FWD. And what I will say is, anyone giving you advice to buy into these sorts of things, understand their incentives and why they're telling you that, because a lot of these people have huge incentives for these things to work out, because it makes them millions and millions of dollars for like little to no effort or work. Okay, particularly like artists and celebrities. I mean, what an unbelievable opportunity to make money. I mean, the amount of money that Logan Paul made for basically nothing on those NFTs. I mean, it's just staggering. All right. I can go into, maybe I'll make a video on this channel actually explaining what NFTs are for those who don't know. There's so many videos on YouTube that I feel like I try not to make content that's just like already out there. What is a non-fungible token, how it actually exists on the blockchain, what that really means, how the authenticity or ownership is created. Like, understanding of those elements are really important, but they're just videos that are already, so I suggest you check that out if you want to learn more about it, about the tech side. Okay. Hey Rafi, what's your thought on Pokemon trophies in other countries, especially in growing countries like China or Taiwan? This is Think FWD. So I'm actually Jake. Rafi's the friend of mine who runs this channel with me. What's your thought on Pokemon trophies in other countries? Yeah, so there are some interesting cards. I'm gonna talk about Sakari's channel here, who does a nice job, and we had Sakari on the channel here, who collects some of these interesting cards, trophy-like cards or legit trophy cards, however you want to define trophies, from other countries that are given out in sort of as prizes for tournaments that happen in these other countries, where that specific card only exists in those countries. I like them. They're going to have smaller markets. So I think that there's opportunity there. I think that if the markets build in those countries, or people who speak those languages get more and more interested in Pokemon, those cards can go up. I also think that people can underestimate them, because people just are focused on the English and Japanese, and if they knew about those more, they might go after them. I think the positives and negatives are fairly obvious for cards like that, and you just have to decide for yourself where it all adds up for you. For me personally, I'm not like, oh my god, huge untapped potential there. The cards I felt had huge untapped potential when I was buying them were English trophy cards, because there's so few English trophy cards. So cards like the Art Academy cards, particularly the English ones, I think people underestimated and still underestimate how few real English chase cards there are. So cards that people can actually read and understand here in what is a huge market for Pokemon cards, but also is going to have that chase and rarity. I think that those cards somewhere down the line may be what everyone goes after, and I think there's so much room to grow on those types of cards. All right. And Pokemon says, I have a friend who is new and into every new set aside from completing his WotC goals. How do I show him the light before he pre-orders another box of Battle Styles? So I think at the end of the day, it's like, do whatever you love and enjoy and collect. And so I think that if you are having a blast opening, collecting, or even just keeping sealed modern boxes and all this sort of stuff, like, go for it. Like, have fun. At the end of the day, having fun in your life and having fun in this hobby, you may look back, it might be more valuable than the few extra thousands you could have made on something that wasn't fun or something you weren't passionate about or didn't enjoy. So money is only worth so much in life. Your time and memories and time with friends and family and community, all that sort of stuff, you may look back on it more favorable than some money that you made. So that's what I would say first. I think it's important. I think people can get the wrong impression, because I kind of talk pretty bluntly about some things in Modern. I'm a huge Modern collector. I love Modern. I really enjoy it. It just doesn't have the investable fundamentals that Vintage has. And even now, Vintage is very undervalued as compared to Modern. That's my honest opinion, and that just comes from a place of pure money and investor, not from a collector, enjoyer, lover of the hobby. As a collector, enjoyer, lover of the hobby, I'm always trying to buy a little bit of Modern here and there. because it's fun, and I open packs sometimes because it's fun, right? Not to make money. It's a huge loss of money, but it's really fun to do. So my first thing would be like, what are his goals? Because if his goals are to have a great time, like, and he's going to have the most fun chasing the new sets with everyone and building out those new binder sets that everyone's building out, that's fantastic. If he thinks those are the best investments, then I agree. I would explain to him supply and demand, and explain to him a little bit of that demand side. I would tell him go study the sports market, in the 90s, the comic book market in the 90s, to see what happened, and see if he sees some similarities, and just ask him to consider those risks. But at the end of the day, everyone's gonna invest or collect the way that they see fit, and I'm not critical of anyone who I'm not critical of people who think dramatically. Like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I think you're way off, Jake. I think that these things are extremely undervalued, and that vintage is so much more expensive and it's way overpriced as compared to modern, because modern's actually going to be the more popular thing in the long run, and I really disagree. I'm not offended at all. I think you are extremely wrong. You might think I'm extremely wrong, and that's perfectly okay. We can respect each other as human beings. It's okay. So I put my money where my mouth is, or where my beliefs are, and I trust myself. So I think that at the end of the day, being trusting yourself, investing in things that you understand, and following through is how you're going to be successful in anything in life. Whether that's successful in your goal of having fun, or successful in your goal of learning a skill, or making money, or growing anything. All right. Jody Matama says, hey, Jake, good to see you. Hey, everyone. Good to see you, too. Glad you're here. Gustavo says, hey, Jake, nice to see you. Want to hear your thoughts on the potential and future value of movie card sets like Mewtwo Strikes Back or Detective Pikachu as a modern set. Yeah, it's a great question, Gustavo. Those Detective Pikachu in particular, they were so cheap, right, forever. I'm not sure if they've gone up in value at all. I think that they're probably still pretty cheap just because there was so much of it. I could see those doing well in the next bubble in Pokemon, if that makes sense. Those are not items that I think have like great investability, particularly in down periods in Pokemon. I think those are the types of items, and we can watch this in 10 years, right? If Pokemon is still around in another sort of growth cycle, which I think it will, if I had to guess, people are going to be like looking at those types of items that there were tons of them, but now they actually have some age to them. They have maybe more movies come out, and people are really look back on that movie with a little bit of that vintage feel, and then people start to really buy out aggressively those types of items, and enough people get interested in buyout that they move those types of prices. So those are the types of things I'm always trying to think, right? It's playing chess. Investing is playing chess. You're always trying to think 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever moves ahead of what other people are thinking. You're doing your best to do that. Now, sometimes you're the more moves ahead you think, the more unlikely those things are to happen. And that's true in chess too. I'm a chess player because there are so many different possibilities in any one given sort of next move to happen. We don't know what's going to happen next, and then if I'm predicting this next thing to happen, and then if that thing happens, I think this will happen, and then I think if that thing happens, this will happen. The further along you get, the lower the probability that you're right on all of those things, which are necessary for you to be right on for that last thing to be right. So you have to understand that risk, and I use the word risk because that's really what that is. It's with each new variable, you're adding risk. So generally, putting little bits of money in those high-risk things, if there's a really good payout and reward on the other side, can be smart whenever there's a high-risk option. But if you have a lot of money and you're in a really good financial position, often taking the safer route that is going to have the more consistent, stable return on your money, whatever that is I think the better way to go. But there are definitely times where I swing for the fences. One of them was in Pokemon. I really swung for the fences in Pokemon because I had a really high conviction in it, and it, has so far worked out. Jody Matomo's videos. Jake, I'm surprised to see myself broadening out what I'm buying these days. With this drought in available cards at retail, I've now gone as far as Garbage Pail Kids Chrome Series 3 boosters. Hilarious. Yeah, I have not been collecting Garbage Pail Kids myself. I actually think that they're fun, though, to be completely honest. I think they're funny. They are... I remember them, right, from many years ago. I don't even know exactly the years on them and when they came out, but I think that they're funny. So when I see them, they put a smile on my face. Curtis Lilly says, hi, if someone only had $60 a month to spend on Pokemon investing / collecting, what areas in general would you suggest they look into? So for collecting, collect what you love. Don't, and for that amount of money, I think that collecting what you love is even more important to really focus down on what makes you happy, because it's just not that much. It's, if you make some mistakes or you buy some things that you really don't like and then you can't flip them or move them, it can really make the hobby, considerably worse experience, right? So understanding, do you like graded cards? Do you like holding sealed product? Do you like, and then maybe factoring into a secondary analysis, okay, well, I like both of these things. Which one of these two things is going to retain its value or make me the most money? Or if I get tired of it, can I flip it? So I think sealed product, like buying sealed product, modern product at retail in this type of market is a good move, because it's fun to open if you decide I just want to have fun. In this market, you can flip it pretty quickly, probably for a profit, as long as Pokemon doesn't completely print a demand. Even if you can't flip it to a profit, you could probably get rid of it at about the same price. And there is a chance that you're going to buy into one of these sets that's extremely popular and for whatever reason is extremely underprinted and never reprinted, and you might see some decent return. I would not expect what's happening on any of these modern sets to hold right now and or be the pattern we see in the future. So you're not going to be seeing those types of returns, and if we continue to see those, I don't know what to say. Pokemon is extremely dropping the ball for the whole hobby and is creating a terrible market where people just can't, it's so much harder for people. There should be fun, affordable products in this hobby always for every income range. And it's very frustrating that there isn't, and that the Pokemon Company, for whatever reason, isn't printing enough to meet that demand. So, or there are so many people who think they're going to get rich that they're actually buying from these scalpers, holding this product at triple the retail value, which I think is crazy. So, if you want to go the PSA route and you want to go buying cards that you hope are going to go up in the future, I think vintage Japanese promos, you can still get PSA 9s, PSA 10s, depending on the ones from some sort of different niche sets, some Domino's promos or the 7-Eleven promos or the Pokeparks, or those are also a little bit cheaper than others. You can get some JR Rally card. You could probably buy one JR Rally card. You could also save up for a few months. Okay. Is always an option for a more expensive card, having patience and saving up. If you want to go for the building sets, I think that being patient, waiting for a lot of cool cards for $60, a lot of cool vintage cards or a lot of cool modern cards that are maybe a bit beat up but are awesome, and you can have a lot of fun building out a binder and having something that you're really proud of and you really love and enjoy. That's an also awesome option that you can achieve with $60 a month if you're really being careful with it and patient. I think everything that I talk about on this channel rings true for anyone, no matter how much money you have. It's just figuring out what items fit the fundamentals we talk about here, or what you love that can be affordable for those prices. And if there's nothing that you love that's affordable for those prices, maybe not being involved, maybe not buying Pokemon cards is okay. Maybe it's why when all the hype was happening, I was saying, here's some affordable options, wink, wink, that I think are investable. And I didn't tell people that they're investable because I didn't want to hype those markets up too much, and I didn't want people to lose money. But I was like, wink, wink, DBZ, Harry Potter, Marvel, right? These are really affordable, fun collections that have so much better value for much lower amounts than anything in Pokemon, right? I was buying nothing in Pokemon that month because I thought everything was silly. So I think trying to read between the lines sometimes in my comments, because I'm really trying to be very careful not to affect prices while also giving my honest opinions on things. So it's a difficult dance. It's why I've almost shut down the channel a few times, because I'm like, is it even an effective dance? Is it even a dance that anyone can actually do? So, so looking into other types of collectibles, maybe if you're not in a great financial situation, maybe saving the money, or putting half of it towards fun, half of it, into stocks and into some maybe safer things. Not a financial advisor here, but it's tough. I get that question a decent amount, and I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that certain things are investable when they're really not. And often things in the world, there aren't inexpensive things that are highly investable because other people realize that they have those good fundamentals that make something investable, that it will go up over time, and so the starting price is already very high. But that's why you have to do your research and be ahead of the curve constantly. If you had taken $60 and you'd been in the Pokemon market when I was in it a couple of years ago, you could have bought, 2 Fossil first edition holo PSA 9s for $60. They were going for like $30 each. And that's just the reality of like being first to market. And not joining crazes or hypes halfway through and expecting that there's going to be affordable investor things anymore. But $60 a month, still within Pokemon, you can find stuff, particularly in those vintage promos, and also if you really save up your money and you're careful. Those are items that I could see at least retaining value or becoming more valuable with time, as long as Pokemon does well. So I hope that's helpful. I think it's so important to set goals, and even you have to be even more careful when you don't have a lot of money because each one of your dollars is even more important. Because if you blow $30, if you blow half of it, as I was saying before, on something that sucks and you don't like, it's even more devastating. So, great question, Curtis. PokeUF says, what's up, Pokemon community? Hey, nice to have you here. Sneakerhead on eBay says, what are your thoughts on the Mewtwo Mew Power Tin? It has an Evolutions pack plus 2 Unified Minds with an amazing promo selling for around $50 on average right now, as long as the items hold. So here's the problem. The problem with all these items is that the reason that the Evolutions booster box is stupidly priced and got way overpriced, and it was a bunch of nonsense. I'm just going to be real. And what happens when one thing gets hyped up or moved up a lot and people are buying it for ridiculous amounts is that then other products that have an Evolutions pack, which is like every product from a number of eras, people say, oh, those are now really a really good deal because that booster box is a really good deal. Because that booster box is so expensive. And they're right in the short term of the mania and the hype. The problem is, if I'm right and everyone is putting money and hoarding product that nobody's going to want or want nearly even close to the value that it is right now in a few years, even though you're being really smart, sneakerhead, and everyone's being smart because they're noticing that, okay, these Kanto boxes, for example, or whatever it is, it's like when I break it down, I'm making a lot more money. And I did this myself, and I was tempted to buy those things and quickly flip them because I was like, and Rafi did this, when he was telling those stories about like a BJ for $15, he could get like two or 3 Evolutions packs, right? There's this, when I was making all those videos and I was like, people are extremely irrational right now and making tons of irrational decisions. That's what it was. It was people were spending thousands of dollars on a Evolutions booster box when they could make their money go so much further in these other sorts of ways. It was that FOMO. It was that gambling. It was all that sort of stuff. Investing into that market is extremely dangerous because it can create sort of a psychology house of cards. Now, buying a box like that, sneakerhead, is much smarter. And buying those Kanto boxes, particularly when they're really cheap at retail, is much smarter of a purchase within that than buying the most inflated item, which is the booster box, and then the most inflated items, which are the PSA cards. Because even the booster box is not nearly as inflated as a lot of the PSA cards are from that set. I think I think people are gonna see that I was right about these things in a couple of years. It's gonna take a long time. So we'll have to see. That being said, it's like for $50, you want to take it. I don't think the market's going to correct anytime soon. I think that people are going to be holding these items for a long time unless these sort of real world unemployment issues hit people in a way all of a sudden, and a lot of the people holding these products really need to sell them to feed themselves. I don't think people are going to be quick to sell at lower prices, because I think that there's going to be an ego involved and all sorts of things on these items. But eventually people are going to have to sell to someone, or they're just going to have all this product that they don't want to open because the cards are basically worthless because so many of the boxes were opened and so many of the cards are out there. So the thing that will save all of this is if there is so much fun and nostalgia of opening it, and that the opening experience is so great for people and so valuable for people in 10 to 15 years, which it could be, that people are willing to pay a lot more than the cards are worth inside the box. But if we look at what happened with Evolutions, the reverse actually happened. People started buying Evolutions sealed product because the graded cards were going for insane prices, because a lot of Timmies, I'm going to throw out the word Timmy, I don't like putting people down, but as Rudy would talk about, Timmies were buying those things thinking that they were base set and rare, and it's just a lot of people making a lot of mistakes all at once, and then smarter people realizing the mistakes, taking advantage of the mistakes. So it tends to be like people make irrational decisions, the smart people figure out how to use those irrational decisions to their benefit, then less smart people see what the smart people did, copy them in a worse way, and then you have smart people taking, and it creates this chain that is just not sustainable. Something is gonna, because there just aren't good fundamentals behind any of it. So just be careful. Those are my opinions on it. At the end of the day, everyone has to figure that out. The same thing's happening in a lot of sports right now, with sports boxes that never had any value. So interesting stuff. It's a great question. I think in the short run, you're probably safe to buy those and try and flip them, try to open them. There's a lot of money to be made right now by buying empty Evolutions booster boxes and buying these types of products, opening them all up, putting 36 packs inside it, and then selling it as like an opened Evolutions booster box. It's like super gross, I think. It's not gross. Let me put it this way. It's not gross because people it's sort of like kind of misleading, right? It's kind of gross and misleading because you're like, this was a booster box vibe, but you don't actually say it. And so I think the people buying those are making a mistake because they're sort of like, they don't want to ask, because if they ask where those packs coming from, they probably would be told those weren't booster boxes. But then why are the booster boxes so much more expensive? There's all sorts of problems there, but there's lots of sets. I know I pick on Evolutions a lot, but there's so many sets and cards that are following the same type of issues and pattern as those. All right. Jody Matamo video says, it's interesting to see prices getting higher and higher for card grading. I really do think there will be at least one new grading company born once per year going forward for a few years. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And Jody says that he hopes that happens because the more competition will be good, as it will drop prices for everyone. That could be. I think it's part of what's so amazing about PSA doubling their prices with this new competitor trying to take some market share. It's like, wow, you're really going to double your prices in this sort of race right now? That must really be because they're slammed and they really don't want any more cards. I mean, what a move by them, right, guys? I mean, crazy. All right. Earth Savior says, Blake Darii says, came across and purchased a PSA 9 2005 State Championship Machoke. What's your opinion on these City, State, National Evolution stamp cards? Debating to buy Near Mint, Machop, and Machamp for grading to have the set. Yeah, so they're all different, and they're all the stamped ones. There's like the regular promo one, which we can have like that's just the stamp of the event on it. Then there's the ones that have like staff stamp or top 8 or top 32, which are the ones that are actually given to either staff at the event or an actual player. Those are much, to me, more valuable because they actually, to me, connect to the event. The other ones could have just been like lots and lots of extras printed. And we don't know how many of those extras could be printed, whereas we have an idea probably of like there are probably only 190 or 200 top 8s or something like that, right? Or even less. Okay, and I like that. I like knowing that. So, I think they're cool. I think those stamps are cool. But it's all about cost of capital there versus somewhere else that might be cooler and might have more value. So, Earth Savior, what are your opinions on Poncho Choose and Japanese SSV Marnie? Japanese Pokemon cards are seeming to gain popularity. The ponchos I like. Yeah, I think that they're cool cards. Again, I think that the ponchos and the screams are overpriced, though, as compared to other older, lesser-known Japanese promos. I think that those were the cards that were pushed the most by certain content creators, not to manipulate the market, but just were out there and people were seeing them and they were being talked about a lot. I think they're also very cool, but they're just, I made a fortune on those. A lot of people made a fortune on those. There was a lot of incentive on those. I think that there's a lot less of some of these other promos that are just so much cheaper because they're not as like cool or recognizable to put on like your Instagram. So, Tasmanian Damon says, when will first jungle and fossil prices start to rise? Original Pokédex, etc. Yeah, so the original Pokédex, original 151, is a good argument for jungle and fossil. Problem with jungle and fossil is there's still so much more product out there. So many more cards are going to be graded. There are going to be even a decent amount more 10s from those sets. Definitely a bunch more 9s. Certainly many, many more 8s, 7s, and 6s. So we're a long way away from those sets being filled out. Because of that, you're going to need just a continuing increase in demand for those prices to go up, which may happen. But if demand goes down while the supply continues to go up, you may see some problems there. But I think in the long run, I like the 151 angle. I agree with it. I like the commons and uncommons and the rares in the long run. Okay, but people just got ahead of their skis on some of these items. Jimmy Jam Mayer says, high-quality level X cards are super hard to find. Yeah, they are. I was looking for years, and I really didn't find that many. Super Glitch, Jake, what do you know about non-stamped foreign worlds cards, French, Portuguese, etc.? Do you know how these were given out? Yeah, it's a great question. So, I don't know exactly how they were given out and if they were given out the same way every year. I've actually never been to Worlds. I'd like to go. I'm going to plan to go to probably the next one, as long as it's safe to go, maybe in London, which would be really cool. I love London, have some good friends there, be non-Pokemon friends, it'd be great to visit there. I don't want to give you the wrong information. I think I have the answer, but you can definitely look up that information right now on Bulbapedia, so I'm just going to say go look it up on Bulbapedia instead of giving you maybe slightly the wrong answer, because I haven't looked it up in a while. So I hope that's I think that's the best way to handle that. 3G cards. Any thoughts on DP Hollows becoming more popular with the Gen 4 remake? Yeah, I think that they will become more popular, but I also think that a lot of it is that people are realizing, and the Pokemon company is realizing that like those generations are starting to get older and starting to have more purchase power. There's a reason why they're making those products now, and they're going to go through the generations. Pokemon's very smart. The company is smart. They understand this, like, you want to collect what you had when you were 10, when you're 30 type idea. And so they're preparing for that, and they're going to start releasing those types of newer generations. They're going to release new products that bring you back, that funnel you in. I think that's more important than the product themselves. Just the part that those 25-year-olds, 26, 27, 28-year-olds, and 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds are starting to have that disposable income for the first time and want to buy their childhood. Okay. So many questions, guys. I appreciate all the questions here. Let's see where we are here. Lost the place for a second. I'm going to try to find it. Okay, found it. Great. So some people saying, yeah, those are excellent purchases. Giuliano says, hey, Jake, what do you think of WotC cards right now? The market seems to be stabilizing. Yeah, I would be careful. I think you're right, but I would be careful. I don't think anything is stable in the world. I think that there are all these huge factors of the pandemic ending and what's going to happen with all these stimulus checks and or unemployment benefits either increasing, running out, whatever happens there is going to have huge impacts on the entire collectibles, online shopping, this market, all the markets. So, and I really wonder how many people are here just to make profit right now, and they're going to move as soon as they can't anymore. So I think that I don't think that they've left in mass yet. Because I still think that they see the heat and there's still so much attention and money to be made. I do think some of that money is going to NFTs, or a lot of that money is going to NFTs, and that money is just always going to go to the next big thing, the next fad. It goes back to those videos I was making early on when all this fad stuff started. You got to be careful because all that money can come into a hobby and then all that money can leave a hobby really quickly. And when a lot of money leaves a hobby, it brings the prices down, obviously, right? Even if people really want to hold the items, it's just the items become so much less liquid. Now, the good news is people freaking love Pokemon. So many people are going to be here to stay. They're going to take breaks. They're going to come and go a little bit, of course. They're going to get bored and tired of it, but they're going to come back again. So, lots of great things happening in the Pokemon card market. I know that I can be a little bit doom and gloomy here, and I think that we are in a time where those messages are important to realize the risk of all these things, but you don't want to lose sight of all of the strength and resilience of the prices, of the market, of the fun, of the value that people are having and will have into the future. So it's going to be a rocky year, I think, in terms of like where the prices are going to go. But nothing would make me happier if prices stabilized and I was wrong about that. So, and prices calmed down. We didn't see huge growth, and we also didn't see if we don't see huge growth, that'll be great. If we don't see huge retrace, that'll be great, right? Be good for the card market to relax. Andrew M. I'm on the high end of the age range you just mentioned, and I primarily opened base, jungle, fossil, neo, and e-reader cards as a kid. Level X might still have several years before they peak. Yeah, I think the level X peak's probably, like 21 to 23, somewhere in there. So maybe even like slightly younger too. Brent says, how do you feel about the higher end play promos? Do you still collect them? So the Gold Star play promos are really, really expensive, obviously. Particularly the Umbreon and Espeon. The other ones are still, reasonably affordable depending on your income. I'm not picking up play promos right now, but large part because I have a lot of them. I went after them for years. I really love them. I love them as a collector. Some of my favorite cards in the hobby. I always tried to buy them raw, tried to source them raw, grade them myself. It was really fun grading them, really fun building those sets. We'll always have a soft spot for them. I understand why people love them and go after them. They have great art, great story, great release. So Nathan Gardner says, what's up? Finally made it live. Good to see you here. Thanks for being here. Jody Matoma says, do you think sealed Pokemon Topps card packs will do well in years to come? I bought myself 3 packs art set of Topps Pokemon Series 2 a month ago. Can't afford the booster box. I'm not at all well off. This is actually a good moment for me to say something that I've been wanting to say, and I do want to make a video on this. If you're a patron of mine and $5 is somewhat of a significant amount, I don't want you to be a patron of mine. Okay? I really, if I have enough patrons, it's going to allow me to like that keep doing this, and it's going to make sense to put in a lot of work, and it's going to motivate me, and I would like to make money that I can then use in other areas of my life and for my kids and all these sorts of things. But I don't want to be taking money from people who really could use the money in their life or really need the money monthly, just because they feel like they have to, or for some perceived like relationship that they're going to get with me, or greater value that they're going to get with me. Okay. I really give everything away for free on this channel. I really want to do that intentionally, and the last thing I ever want in the world to do is be one of these like like a guru who is like, give me your last $100 because the advice or what I'm going to offer you is going to change your life. Okay, so this isn't a comment at you, Jody. It just reminded me this idea that not everyone watching, there are a lot of people watching this channel who have like millions and are extremely wealthy. There are a lot of people who, like me, are make sort of reasonable salaries as a social worker or a teacher. There are people who are making pretty big salaries, quite a bit bigger than mine. There are people who might be making very little salary right now, and what I've always wanted to say is, like, if you're making a lot and you're getting a lot of value, like, please be a Patreon member. That's a nice thing to do to help support the channel and to help support the other people here getting great info who maybe don't have the money and can support. And I may even have introduced higher tiers in the future for people who are quite well off and do really get a ton of value here and really use the information to make more money or whatever it is. Because I just, $5 is a lot of money every month. For someone who asked that question earlier, like, if you have $60 to spend on Pokemon, do not be a patron of $5 here. It's just not worth it. Come and hang out in the lives, get the information for free. I'm going to try to do my best to do that. So I really, really want that to be clear. For my mental health too. I just don't want I don't want to imagine that there are people spending money that's stressing them out on my Patreon. And I know some people are like, well, it's only $5, but for $5 is a lot of money. Trust me, I know. Yeah, I won't go into it, but what I do for a living and also just my experience is I know what that can mean to people and families. So don't feel like you have to do that, okay? All right, enough said on that. So your question is, do you think sealed Pokemon Topps card packs will do well in years to come? I bought myself 3 packs of Topps Pokemon Series 2 months ago. I can't afford the booster box. I don't know what to think about Pokemon Topps. There's some people who are definitely shilling it and hyping it up who have a bunch of it. There is genuine collector interest and enjoyment of those. I'm just not sure how much. I'm really not sure. I go kind of back and forth on it. I think that the Chrome is cool looking and investable. I'm not sure about the others, to be completely honest. I'm not sure. Like, they just don't look that great. I think most of them, and like even like just the regular foils, I just don't think they're very good looking, and it worries me a bit. But depending on the value, depending on how much you're paying, there could be great value there if they're so much less than the Topps Chrome, obviously, which is extremely expensive. So I would be careful myself. That could be bad advice, though, Jody, because I just might not be aware of that market, and there might be a huge market, and this might be really undervalued and go up a lot, right? Like I can be wrong all the time about this sort of stuff. But just giving you my take on it, it just doesn't. It's not part of the core TCG. It's not super connected to people's lives, to the nostalgia. And it's not early. It's not like the pre-TCG Japanese stuff, which was like the first ever Pokemon cards, right? This stuff, I'm just not sure why this stuff is so great and so valuable, other than that it's hard to grade if it's not cool looking. I don't really get it, if that makes sense. Whereas I get the Topsoon, I get the Cardass, because Cardass is freaking amazing art, and I get the the TCG WotC cards because it's what we collected as kids and we have such connections to it. So not sure where those fall in all of that. So hopefully that makes sense. I mean, people did collect them and like them as kids, but I just worry there are some people who owned a lot of that product who really tried to create a market, and that's what happened there. Nathan Gardner said, "Forgot it was a Saturday this week." Yeah. So we're doing it. We're doing it Saturday. Usually we do these on Sunday for those who don't know. But I have a conference that I'm gonna be in all day tomorrow, so we had to switch it to Saturday. One last thought though, Jody, on those tops. There are some tops cards that I do really like. I liked the ghost foils, and I do like some of like the techno sparkle cards. I think that those are cool looking, but again, those are very expensive and on the high side of tops. So it's all subjective though. So if you love them, if you love the way they look, and other people love the way they look, I'm completely wrong, because the supply side and the difficulty to grade is there. So it's more of a subjective argument about the demand and where the demand is coming from. Okay, Brandon Duval says, Jake, how do you feel about stamped movie promos? I Mewtwo Strikes Back. I recently purchased a Deoxys promo from the Destiny Deoxys movie, and I'm in love with the card. I don't know too much about it. The Deoxys promo from the Destiny Deoxys movie. I'd have to look up. I don't even know exactly what that is in my head. There's so many cards. I can look that up, Brandon, and maybe I can talk more about it next time. I apologize for not having it. You know what? Let me look it up quickly, because I'm sure once I look it up, will take a second. I will recognize the card. That's often what happens with these things. Usually, whenever you're asking a question and it's of a bit of an obscure card, if you can give me a date on the card, because often I remember the cards based on date, that can really help trigger my memory. Ah, yes, this card. Just like this. Okay. Yeah, so this is, I think this is a cool card. I like the stamp. It has the Deoxys logo from 2005. It's of that era. Cool card. It goes, but to that supply side, I have no idea how many of these exist. I think I own one of these somewhere. The graded card's very affordable. There are a lot of these on eBay right now. I believe, I don't know how this card was released. You probably know if it was released with, like, if you bought the DVD case, was it with that? Or if it was released separately. I think it's cool because it's English. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely could be an undervalued card. These are the types of cards that there may not be that many of them, and if someone did, like, if people got really interested or a big YouTuber started talking about it, a lot of them could be bought off the market. I'm looking right now, there are a lot of them on the market, which makes me think one of two things. Either there are so many of these, right? I mean, some of these movie promo cards, they were released at the movie theaters, and maybe this one was too. I wasn't in Pokemon anymore at this time. And those, they just are so many of them because they just had so many packs at every movie theater that they distributed, like, all over the place, and they just gave them so many extras. They, like, printed them endlessly. So there just may be too many of these to ever really justify, to ever really make these really investable or move up over time, because they all need to be really pulled off the market. When you see this many cards on a market, it makes me worried, particularly something so niche that people aren't talking about or buying that much. So that would be my quick hit analysis of just looking up that card. But it also goes to show us, Brandon, and it's such a great question. There's just so many of these cards, so many options. Jody Matomo says, but I guess a good thing, Brandon, is like to see the type of analysis I do, right? First, I orient myself. What card is this? What set is it related to? How popular is the set? the history part of it, which you talk about, that's released with the movie. Okay, that's cool. What's my knowledge about when they're released with movies? How are they usually released? Usually there are a lot of them. Usually they're sealed and they hand them out with the tickets at the movie theater. That means that this is probably a massive release. There are probably tons of these. This is not a limited release like maybe a Poke Park or something like that, potentially. Then I go, okay, well, let me see on eBay how many are being sold, for what prices are they being sold. I'll check sold listings. Then I'll go on PokemonPrice.com or the PSA website. I'll check to see how many of these have been graded, how quickly they've been graded over time, the breakdown on the grade. And if I do all of that analysis and I realize, okay, the supply side looks pretty good here, they seem pretty rare, the price seems really undervalued, no one seems to be buying them, it's a great opportunity. Quickly, what I've seen here is kind of meh, but I would do more research if you're really interested. Okay. Max Ramsey said, Jake, I think a great guest on the future podcast would be Reserved Investments. I've been watching him for weeks, and he goes deep on antiques and collectible markets. You two would have a great chat. Yeah, I've thought about reaching out to Sean, I think is his name, before. I'm sure that, I imagine that he would like to come on and would be interested in that type of discussion. Maybe at some point I will. I'm really looking for certain people right now to fill certain niches that I'm looking for, because I like bringing on new people for new types of discussions. So I'm looking to focus on that, and I'm also looking to highlight some smaller Pokemon creators, as well as Pokemon creators who are my size, who I think deserve more attention. So, but definitely we would have a good conversation. I think we see these markets pretty similarly. Okay. So I'm going to answer a couple more questions here. And then for the last 15 minutes or so, we're going to end it at 5 p.m. today, which is in about 26 minutes. I'm going to really try to keep these to 2 hours so I don't exhaust myself too much. Going to do about, we'll do about 15 more minutes, maybe a little bit less of questions here in the middle, and then I'll jump to the bottom of the chat and answer a couple questions that people have in response to some of the stuff I've said, and or just hang out for a few minutes before we go. Jody says, Jake, how has your week been? That he'd love to know. It's been okay. I've been pretty busy. Let's see. I've been feeling pretty good about things. I feel I'm settling into my new place, and I have so many cards I'm going through right now. Dragon Ball Z cards. I'm a little disorganized, and there's stuff everywhere. So I really need to get organized. I'll feel a lot more settled and comfortable when things are a little bit more in the right place. But I'm doing pretty good. Hopefully you guys are all doing okay. I think hopefully we're rounding the corner with a lot of this vaccine stuff, and with the numbers going down, and it's been a weird, wacky year. Hopefully people are hanging in there mostly, and that next year will return and just feel a little bit maybe more normal and calm for people, and we'll just get to see a lot more of our loved ones, and also get to meet more people and just be out more, hopefully make new friends in person. I think a lot of this online stuff has been super helpful for people to connect and have these communities, and I'm glad that we've been able to have this here, and all the different communities that have sprung up on the internet as a way to add more of that social connection this year. But yeah, doing good. Hopefully you're doing good, Jody, and everyone else is doing pretty good too. Noah said, asks, hey, can you please talk about the rise of Call of Legends and SL cards? They seem to already be reaching Gold Star levels, lower end Gold Stars. I love the artwork. Yeah, they're great cards. They were definitely on the list of those cards I was talking about. Were cards I was buying and have been investing or buying for years. Yeah, they're not gold stars to me, in large part because I just don't think they're nearly as cool looking. They're also not as old. They don't have the same type of history, I think, in the hobby. And the booster boxes are so much more affordable, so it's so much easier to pull them. So I'd be careful if the prices are similar to the gold stars, to the lesser gold stars. I still think the lesser gold stars for me should be more valuable than the more expensive SL cards, probably. Maybe the only one that wouldn't be might be like if we compare the Lugia to like maybe some of the Regis. Although the Regis, like the Regice in particular, is like really low pop, so in like a PSA 10. So I'm not so sure about that. I still think that probably the Regis should be more expensive, but these are all probably going to be pretty rare cards, pretty hard cards to grade. The gold stars are the pop reports are going to be a lot more filled out than these SL cards. They're going to be more of these SL cards sent in and opened up from packs. So be careful. Be careful. When the level X generation and the SL cards and all that stuff gets too high, that's when you have to ask a question of like, okay, what's happening here? Are people just trying to be early in the next gold stars? I viewed them as the next gold stars 2 years ago, and not as that they were going to reach that hype, but that they had similar fundamentals and properties, a lot of these cards, and they were just being so overlooked. So I haven't changed my opinion on them, but they're not the gold stars in terms of the history, in terms of the first cards being outside the art, in terms of the beauty, I think. But that's subjective. Squeaks Gamer says, but how much of the 9.5 lower pricing is because, talking about CGC, how much of the 9.5 lower pricing is because accessibility is higher and therefore PSA 10 could be just potentially inflated due to artificial scarcity built on their turnaround times? Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, Squeaks. I agree with I think the analysis behind this is that if we can imagine, like in 6 months to a year, if there are as many PSA 10s as there are 9.5s in CGC, if the CGC 9.5 is basically going to become equivalent to a PSA 10, or maybe even more valuable than the PSA 10, it's possible, but it has a psychological hill to climb there, I think, if we're being honest. Because of just how 10s have always been viewed in this hobby versus 9.5s. You can see, obviously, how 9.5 Beckett has done versus PSA. Will CGC be able to close that gap? I think with people like you talking daily about the value of these other companies and you continuing to build your following and continuing to, like, say, smart, honest, good analysis, and people like me also being very honest and talking about buying the card, not the grade, I appeal in the importance of that over time. I do think that some of these grades may become more irrelevant on the high end. They'll certainly become more irrelevant than they are today, where so many people are literally just buying the grade and not the card at all. They don't even look at the card. They just see the grade. They pay whatever that grade price is. But while we're still existing in that sort of realm, I don't see that happening. I don't think, just look, like, so many people don't care at all about demands, about supply side. And I think that it's so much of that, just having that highest possible grade and completing those sets, and the fact that so many people are so invested into those, not to mention all of the high-end people in the hobby, some of the experts in the hobby continuing to say that PSA, and then PSA maybe figuring out what they're doing. I think the PSA doubling their prices is just crazy, and has just opened so much opportunity for CGC in this modern market. And maybe because of that, CGC becomes the modern card grader. And in the modern market, this is where I think, if I was in CGC, this is where I would hope that things were going, okay? Because there's going to be so many PSA 10s, and PSA 10s are going to be so easy to get on modern cards, CGC might take over the modern market where the 9.5s become PSA 10s and the CGC 10s become where a lot of the value actually is stored. That would be what you'd hope, what CGC, for CGC's sake, will hopefully become, and I think for the Pokemon card market. But there's just so much risk in that. And I know you sent tons of cards off to CGC, Squeaks, and I just think I think we're still at a point where that's risky financially, unless you're looking to sell them quickly. I know you and I are you have a store and run a business, and this is your full time. So everyone's going to have sort of a different situation, and is gonna and has a different risk tolerance, and is going to make different decisions. I certainly don't think sending a lot of cards out to CGC makes no sense or is completely irrational right now. But I imagine if you and I had a conversation on it, we would probably agree. I think a lot more than we would disagree on all of these topics, honestly. Let's see. Twice Baked Jake is talking again about Tag All Stars. Yeah. So he's already pumped Tag All Stars once 6 months ago, and I wrote a comment on it like, stop pumping sets and telling everyone that all these like modern sets are investable. And I actually pulled the comment down because about a month ago, because I was just like, I was really irritated and annoyed in the comment, and I didn't like that I really went strong at it because I was like, you're hurt, like you're both hurting the market, because first of all, let's keep some sets affordable for people. Like you're basically signaling to scalpers to buy all of this up instead of letting it actually grow in a genuine way with just people like liking it and buying it. When you throw out a word investment, when there are like no fundamentals around why that's an investable item. Everything is investable in Pokemon to some people. Like anything and everything is investable, and I think that hurts the hobby in a lot of ways. So, but yeah, if he's talking about that again, so I don't know. Last time it didn't have that much effect on prices. I think it went up. Initially it did, but there was so much of that product, and people just really didn't like that set that much. So, it is a really fun set to open. I'm definitely not an anti-tag team, Tag All-Star set. I think the gold cards are cool. It's really fun. It's a great fun set. They actually printed enough of it. This was before the shortages. If you guys remember, even around then, we were able to get product. It really wasn't until Vivid Voltage that people couldn't get the modern product, and people couldn't pre-order and couldn't get these things. So, yeah, I don't know. It's if you compare that, I get the argument, right? The argument is going to be something without even seeing the video. If you make an argument in it, other than just saying it's investable, the argument is going to be something like, well, CP6 is so expensive, Shiny GX is so expensive, Poke-Kayun, all these like specialty Japanese sets always go up so much in price. Why has this one not? It's a sleeper set. It's like, well, the answer is because there's so many other things to collect. There was nothing that really stood out with that set to people. There were God packs which were cool, and there were gold cards which were pretty cool, but it wasn't like, Shiny GX, the phenomenon of Shiny GX, or the CP6, where I think that the CP6 holos actually look like the vintage original holos for whatever reason, the art style. So I don't know. Everyone's going to run their channel the way they see fit on that sort of stuff, and I'm sure it's going to have an effect. I think that the question is, what do you do about it? It's like, do you now buy some of that to take advantage of it and then sell into it, or do you just ignore it? Or are you frustrated because you were actually able to buy that at a fairly affordable rate, and that was fun, and now it's going to push the price high in a sort of short-term, somewhat artificial way? So, RS Nerd says, this guy only talks about cards he's amassed positions in. I don't know what he says has any value. So I think you're talking about Twice Baked Jake in response to that, and not me, because it was in response to Sakari's comment. But I'm not sure, not 100% sure. I have no idea what Twice Baked Jake, who he is as a human being. I've never talked to him. I don't think that I would be really shocked if he started a channel to pump up his own cards. That just doesn't seem like the story or the narrative. I feel like he's a random dude who likes Pokemon, who got into it, started collecting, started making and then Unlisted Leaf picked up one of his videos, blew up that video, and people really like his stuff, obviously, and really like it and tune into it. And I think I like his attitude generally. I like the way he runs the channel. I like his catchphrase, welcome to the hobby, rather than welcome to the investment opportunity, or welcome to the money-making scheme, or whatever. I just think he blends this sort of like investor content, and he's not doing like deep dives into like what makes something investable, and I think part of it might be that he has a different definition of investment, or he doesn't take it so seriously. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily take it so seriously. I think there's huge parts of this market, right, that they say they're investors, but really they're just trying to have fun. They want to rip packs and have a good time. And I think that's totally fair and reasonable. I worry about people doing that too much, and about the way that influencers not even necessarily intentionally take advantage of that. But I don't know. I've talked at length about this. You guys know my feelings, so. And to RS Nerd's point about he only talks about cards that he has a position in, I think that's also a good point, just in the sense that, first of all, I never hear him give like negatives, or almost never. Once in a while I do, to give like the risk side. He never talks about risk. He doesn't talk about like cards he doesn't own, and he doesn't talk about, very often if he does, from what I've seen. Now, I haven't watched every video. This is too hard, because he's made so much content and it's not fair. So, and I do wish his channel like the best of luck, like everyone. I mean, we're all just human beings here, and this is a great opportunity for him, and maybe he'll make a career out of it. And I know he's a younger guy, he's in school. All right. I think just because we only have 10 minutes left, I am going to jump to the bottom. I apologize for people who didn't get their questions answered, as usual. But thank you for asking the questions and being here. Hopefully your question got answered in some form by someone else. Hey, Shreddy, nice to see you here. Shreddy Breck said, interesting note on Unlisted Leaf. What was the video he pumped? Yeah, so I'm a guy who just watches all of the ways the channels get started and how things move. And so the video so Unlisted Leaf did a video of one of Jake's videos where he reacted to his video on prices. And I actually hated the video because the prices that Twice Baked Jake actually made in that video, if I'm being completely honest, were too high at the time. Now they're way too low, but he actually misquoted and quoted some shill-bidded cards that then went out with Unlisted Leaf to a huge channel. And then at that time, Twice Baked Jake was a really small channel. I think he only had like 1,000, 2,000, only 1,000 views maybe per video or something like that. And that video got 50, 60,000 views. And, but he's really good at Jake has good content and makes good videos that people enjoy watching. If someone pumps up one of your videos or puts it out there, you're not going to be a successful channel unless you're actually providing some value that people like to keep tuning in. They like your personality. They like what you have to say. So Pocket Monster Dom says, I feel like when it comes to collectible cards in particular, the old guard is going to stick to their guns because ultimately switching over to a new dog will ruin their position. Yeah, I think that's something you always have to look out for, and definitely is true for certain people, in my opinion. I hope you guys realize how untrue that is for me, how honest I am about things that I own. Like, I have massive positions, and I have lots of evolutions, right? Like, I have many tens of thousands of dollars in evolutions, like much more than probably most of the people who are angry at me for saying negative things about evolutions, in terms of, because I had so many of those Charizards in there at PSA, and I'm hoping someone will come back 10s and 9s and I'm going to sell him, right? And so if I said evolutions is great or just said nothing, that would make me more money. So I am all the time saying things on this channel that are that are not good for my wallet. I hope people notice that over time. I'm sure people do, and that's why hopefully I'm somewhat trustworthy. That being said, all of my views can be wrong at any time. So let's not get it twisted. It doesn't, just because I am hopefully trustworthy and I try to be as unbiased as possible and tell you guys how I actually see things, it doesn't mean that that's right, which is a whole nother thing, okay? Pocket Monster Dom says, let's see. Having a nice, interesting back and forth and debate about TBJ, so some people saying that as long as he doesn't sell into the hype, it's not a problem. And I mostly agree with that, Pokey John, as far as like a moral thing. Although I do think that like other people are manipulating around him and using his content to move prices and do sorts of things. And the fact that he doesn't acknowledge that, I think on some level is a bit problematic, but Juliana says, I think TBJ targets his channel more towards new people into the hobby. Welcome to the hobby doesn't make sense as a greeting if you've been in the hobby for a while. Yeah, so I'm a fan of his channel, and I'm a fan of what it's doing, and I'm a fan of him bringing more people, and I'm a fan of the way he talks and interacts with everyone, and the way he makes people feel. So we need to be careful, right? It's like, I think 90% of what he says and does is excellent and great, and I commend him on, and then 10% of the investing, pricing stuff, I think I strongly disagree with, but he may strongly disagree with me and say, you know what, all that's good, and hyping is good. And listen, if you go into other hobbies, there's a million people doing that, and they're doing it much in worse ways, okay? So, a lot of people in Pokemon, when they hear me talk about this stuff, they think my standards are way too high for everyone. So, and I think it's like, what can we realistically expect of people, and how are you going to compete and do well on YouTube if you don't do some of that stuff and you don't talk about the money, and all this sort of stuff. I mean, even look at my last PSA video, right? There's a lot of money in that video. I intentionally try to not put money in the title. Like, I'm intentionally, actively trying not to do those sorts of things, but there's such pressure to do it because it works so well. So it's tough. It's really tough. But it is frustrating when people don't acknowledge their influence, or call out or are angry at people who are trying to have a reasonable discussion about the effects of that influence. So, all right, let's take a few more questions. PokeJohn says that he watches his videos and they are good. Yeah, I think it's great that you watch his videos. I think everyone here should support his channel. And everyone here should support his channel, when you disagree with anyone, you be polite and definitely anyone here who, if we're having debates here, like, everyone please be polite to each other and respect each other's opinions. Okay. Ricardo says, hey Jake, could you show us some of your favorite binder sets sometime? I nearly finished all 4 Harkle Soul Silver sets, which I think have amazing art. Yeah, I definitely can do it. So what I've been thinking about doing, Ricardo, is doing a tour of my collection at some point, and I think I'd probably break it down into like sealed, PSA, and then do binders. A lot of my binders at one time were complete, and now are not complete because I've been over the years grading and taking cards out, and I haven't been refilling them. But I have probably 30 binders or something. I have a lot of binders, and there's a bunch of cool cards in them. We can definitely talk about binders. I can show you guys how I keep my cards, how I store them safely, that sort of thing. Everyone has their own way of doing it. And then I also have a lot. I have a lot of non-Pokemon, not a lot, but some non-Pokemon collections. Particularly my sealed collection is a bit more non-Pokemon. So I definitely want to make those videos for you guys at some point in the future. It'll be fun. Ariel Penguins is Battle of the Jakes. I'm sure if we talked in person, we would get along and have a nice conversation, I assume. Base Blue Boy says, how do you get binders cheaper? The nice zipper ones are expensive as heck now. I've paid a lot for my binders. I always try to look for them on sale. I'm always trying to save a little bit of money here and there and try and spend as little money on that sort of stuff as possible. But for me, it's really important to have those faux leather binders because the way it feels, like I just find myself that I'm always looking at those binders a lot more because I like the way it feels in my hand a lot more. So spending a little extra money is important for me. So understanding kind of where is it important for you to spend a little extra on storing so that you actually get a lot more enjoyment out of your collection, I think is valuable to think about. I try to buy a bunch of them at once. I can usually get them for like $17, $18 each, rather than like the $25, $30 that a lot of them go for. Sometimes even $15 each. When I buy a few of them at once, I get my my dragon sleeves. I bought a huge like liquidation lot of these, so I bought like many like 15, 20,000 of them for like an insanely cheap price. Back like 6 months ago. And I actually double sleeve. It's expensive, but I double sleeve cards. Here's just a random Dragon Ball Z card. So I have my perfect fit sleeve, and then I put it in another in a outward sleeve. Garrett says, just want to say I really appreciate the content you provide for us, Jake. Thank you, Garrett. That means a lot. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hopefully, I'm doing a good job. I know it's crazy that I haven't shown you guys a lot of my cards in a while. Still got them. Still got all those cards. I'm sitting on just like there's lots of boxes of them. Pokemon Memorabilia says, binders definitely serve an important role of nostalgia. Graded cards are nice for grails and presentation. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the whole thing, just like you. I love having both. I find myself spending. I know that there are people who don't spend their time looking at their PSA cards. I do. I have ways of displaying them and different cases and different things that I put up just so that I can have them in the background in my room and I can look at them and really enjoy it. And then my binders I love. And I love looking at my binders, but it's also super fun just building the binders. Like it feels great completing and like making progress, and I love buying one card at a time or a few cards at a time sometimes, even just to feel that like slow progress. It's super fun. So it is about time for us to end the chat for today, but I will be back. I'll be back next week. If you can take a second just to like the video, to show some support for the channel. If you can like the video, subscribe if you do get some value and are interested in the content, and if you can afford it, if you would like to become a Patreon member, you do get to ask your questions first. It's the one thing that the one perk. Otherwise, there really isn't much of a perk. It's mainly if you want to support the channel. We have a number of people doing it, and I really appreciate all of them. So if you can afford it, if you do have the money and and can become a Patreon member, that's a great way to support the content too. So thank you all so much again, and I hope everyone has a really good week this week. I should have a few videos for you hopefully this week if they come through. Hopefully an interview, which will be really great. The last interview I loved doing. Will's such a great guy. So many people we've had on the channel that I really enjoyed. I do want to bring some guests from the past on again at some point, because they're really friends of mine and they just have so much great insight, and it'd be great to maybe do some specific topics on that. So again, just a big thank you to everyone. We're really cruising here, over 4,000 subscribers, and really building a nice community here every week. It's just so great to see all the names, and what else can I say? Thank you so much. So everyone have a good week, and